This was the last slide where I was explaining the light reflex. So we just have to rule out any intraocular drugs, any mydriatic before to performing a light reflex, especially in the ICU patients. Now the approaches for the optic nerve basically are described as approaches to the orbits, as to how to expose the orbit. So the first procedure described was the frontotemporal craniotomy by Dandy, and later came the orbitofrontal, orbitozygomatic, and the lateral wall approaches. So basically, the approaches to the orbit have been divided into extracranial approaches and the intracranial and the transcranial or the intracranial approaches. The extracranial approaches, depending on the tumor location, whether it's an intraconal tumor or an extraconal tumor, and the relation to the muscle compartments, are then selected as a lateral orbitotomy and anterior orbitotomy, anteromedial, transethmoidal, or an inferior orbitotomy. The transcranial approaches remain the same as subfrontal or frontotemporal orbital, or even a pterional approach for a lateral orbitotomy. The supraorbital keyhole approaches have also been used for these tumors. The eyebrow incision has been taken. Inferior infraorbital incisions have also been used to reach these tumors. And now with the advent of endoscopes and the functional endoscopic sinus surgeries, we have the extended endonasal approaches, more particularly for tumors which occupy the medial compartment. That is the medial inferior extraconal approach and the medial intraconal approach. So these approaches depend on the tumor location, and most commonly, whatever tumors we have had are not primary optic nerve tumors, but tumors of the orbit, most commonly being cavernomas or hemangiomas, which we are mainly doing by an extracranial or a transcranial approach. We don't use endonasal approaches at our institute anyway. So this was my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Apurva, for the wonderful presentation. I think I'll just unmute everyone. I'll hand to Ambika sir to ask questions.
No, nice presentation. Nothing. I think if Apurva can go through some important slides, which he thinks which are useful for exam,
yes,
I think
sir.
it will be good because it's a long presentation.
Yes,
so
sir.
Important to go through basically the pathway, optic pathway, and approaches to orbit, and
yes, sir.
The other things are that Warren Wilbrand's knee. I think in the last practical examination, we had asked all the three people, your juniors, about Wilbrand's knee, and none of them answered Wilbrand's knee. So, that one, and this Mears loop, and the types of scotoma that you see at each level. All these things are extremely important for your exam and for localization. Also to understand whether whatever empirical decision making, if you are seeing a lesion and if the scotoma is not correlating with it, you should be wary to and you should investigate the patient further to see if the scotoma is due to something else and not because of the tumor. So especially in pituitary, you rarely see papilledema in pituitary patients. You rarely see things like if you have something like quadrantanopia or something, you have to be careful about what it is, and craniopharyngioma. So visual pathway and field defects it is a very important slide, and of course optic nerve examination and all is very important. Anyway, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to type or ask.
Yes, sir. I'm unmuting one person at a time. So if they have any questions or any inputs, then they will say. I'll just.
Or they can type also. They can type also in the chat.
Yes, sir. So, Dr. Vivek Patel, any questions from your side?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, fine.
It's a very good presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Achal, any questions?
No, sir. Thank you very much. It's definitely very good presentation. Basic and advanced, everything is included in this. So only thing is, again, can you explain the importance of Willebrand's knee? Apurva, sir.
Yeah.
Apurva, Willebrand's knee.
See, Willebrand's knee is nothing but just a projection of the ipsilateral nasal fibers as they cross through the chiasma to the opposite side. So this is the projection which gives the shape of a knee, that is why it's called a Wald Willebrand's knee.
Yes, sir.
And lesion at this point usually causes a junctional scotoma. So you need to be aware of this entity, because this will not produce a completely a bilateral symmetric field effect. So when you have a junctional scotoma, you need to think of the Willebrand's knee, and that is why this anatomical entity is important. Come back, I can answer better.
No, what you're saying is right. So
there are two types, no, sir, but
two types.
Yes, sir.
What?
Yeah, Nikhil, go ahead.
Yeah, so in this diagram only, basically the superior, the nasal fibers which are decussating, the superior go onto the contralateral optic nerve, okay, and then they come into the tract, and the inferior go into the ipsilateral optic tract, and then they go into the contralateral tract. So you will have two kinds of variations of the Willebrand's knee.
Right.
See, I read that in De Jongs, what they mention is that the projection of the nasal fibers into the ipsilateral optic tract, it's just a variation. See, one Willebrand's knee is almost a common entity which you find, but the projection of the nasal fibers into the ipsilateral optic tract is just a variation found in very few individuals. What you're saying is definitely correct.
Yeah, there are two types. Yeah, there's two types. That's what I meant to say.
No, I'm not sure if that is a type of one Willebrand's knee. One Willebrand's knee is specifically the nasal fibers which project into the contralateral optic nerve. Okay. What you are saying that the ipsilateral fibers, they go into the ipsilateral optic tract while they cross. I don't think that is a type of one Willebrand's knee. That is just a variation which is seen in some people. So I'm not sure. Is it a type of one Willebrand's knee, or is it just a variation of the?
No, it's a type. I think not a type exactly. It is based on the inferior nasal fibers and superior nasal fibers. Those kind of things are there in De Jong also. And one more thing regarding Von Willebrand's this one knee is that it is not seen. It's actually a cadaveric finding. It seems most of the article they say it's just a cadaveric finding. Most of the people will not have such kind of scotomas. Very rare. Around 15 to 20% only you see in new clinics. So how far the Trachwar syndrome junk? Yes, sir.
The importance of Willebrand's knee is in exams.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
More for your exam rather than for making clinical decisions. That's why we asked all the three people and nobody answered this. So Dr. Muzumdar was asking the same question. This is mostly for the exam, not for anything else.
Okay, sir. I'll ask the next question. Dr. Rahul, any questions or inputs from your side?
Yes. Apurva, this anything about redox phenomena?
No, sorry.
Okay, there's something called as redox phenomena, that there is something that confrontation can be done in both static as well as kinetic. And if you have a variation in your static and kinetic, so you should suspect the lesion somewhere in the anterior part of the cortex of occipital lobe. So that is one redox phenomena is there. That is one thing. And regarding how do you test the field of 60 to 90 degree? Any idea? Like the temporal. That is one thing they ask, like 60 to 90 degree. If you have a field effect in the range of, yes.
It is difficult to test between 60 and 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Yes,
sir. Very often because there are a lot of artifacts between 60 to 90 degrees. And usually this.
So voice is disturbed. Hello, sir. Your voice is not clear.
Yeah, there are a lot of artifacts while
Yes, sir.
testing between 60 and 90 degrees. And actually, we had asked this question to Amin Kasam in one of our workshops.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And according to Amin Kasam, during early optic now compression, RFNL is more sensitive. But again, that is the controversial topic, whether it is sensitive or not. But there is no definite answer to your question, how to test between 60 and 90 degrees.
So when I asked the ophthalmologist here, what they say is 60 to 90 degree, almost it cannot be tested. Most of the perimetry which commonly they use in the ophthalmology department, they don't test this 60 to 90. It's very difficult to test. If at all, sometimes in a advanced perimetry machine, you are able to find a 60 to 90 degree some defect unilaterally, then it directly it's a good localizing value. It goes near the anterior part of calcarine cortex. The lesion should be there only. Only the lesion in anterior part of calcarine cortex can produce such a field defect temporarily.
Maybe. Only thing is, knowing that it is genuine defect and not artifact is again difficult to. Whether it is a genuine field defect or an artifact is difficult to say between 60 and 90. So, yeah,
so that can be,
for example, purpose, your question may be valid. Yeah, especially for exams.
Yes. And regarding that spontaneous visible pulsation that you said, like it should be like prior patient documented SPP should be there. Then only can come that now there is absence of SPP and hence papilledema. I think not in all patients you can't find a SPP. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I'll unmute him. Bola, sorry.
See what even what the books mention is that a reduction in the SVP is compared to before, and a reduction it's a reduction in the it's a reduction in the SVP, not the absence.
Reduction, I don't think you can make it out. I don't.
That is what the reduction is only when you can compare it to a previous examination.
Previous examination, yeah, correct.
Yeah. So if you have documented SVPs previously and now you find a reduction as compared to the previous examination, then you can.
So now you have a new patient with a lesion, and this SVP is not seen on your ophthalmoscope. You can't brand him as he's having now papilledema like that. You can say that there is a chance of papilledema like that. Only SVP
but the books also mention that if the SVPs are absent, that is indicative of a raised ICP more than 200 millimeters of water. So even if the patient comes to your clinic for the first time and he has no SVPs, you can be 100% sure that he has a raised ICP much more to the tune of 200.
Okay. And few more questions like.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw in the Ditong also. And few more questions. Can you the something called as bow tie atrophy is there? You know, bow tie.
Yeah.
Atrophy?
See, if you go to optic atrophies, there are hundreds of optic atrophies. There's a bow tie optic atrophy. There is a.
No, one which is relevant to us is there's something called as chiasmal bow tie atrophy. There's something called as optic tract bow tie atrophy. Two things are there. I was asked this question by the examiner. That's why I was putting in this one. I couldn't find that much of answer in that. So that is one thing. And one more thing is that
small paragraph given about bow tie optic atrophy in
Dijon. That is very small. It's not.
Yeah, that's very small.
It's not explaining. That is not explaining the things. There is something called as bow tie atrophy in chiasmal lesion. There's something called as bow tie atrophy in optic tract. So that I still didn't find out the answer, but there's something like this. And one more thing is this post fixation blindness. You know anything about that? Again, it is in. They asked me in the bitemporal hemianopia and that hemislide phenomena. Whenever they have bitemporal hemianopia, they will read the first and the third line. They will miss out the second line if they read it vertically. If they read it horizontally, they will miss some words. They don't read those words. They can read side words or like what do you say? They will miss some words while reading the newspaper vertically as well as in the horizontally. That is hemislide phenomena.
Okay.
Yeah, for Amsler grid, you can use the graph paper. Yeah, this is for this one. And one more thing, that Amsler grid is for like, you can use the graph paper. It's a crude way of testing graph paper. And one more thing, that binasal hemianopia you said, na?
Yeah.
One more cause for that is post-transsphenoidal surgeries, where the cella can sink into your cell. Where the chiasm can sink into your cella and can cause binasal hemianopia.
Okay, so
That's
when
it.
you have removed the cella flow
Yeah.
and then the
For
cella sinks
previous
in.
operation. Yeah. Correct. Like that.
That
That
is the
can cause
secondary
binasal.
empty cella. Secondary empty
Yeah,
cella
secondary
syndrome.
empty
Yeah,
cella.
secondary
Yeah,
empty cella.
secondary empty cella only, but that can cause a binasal. One more cause for binasal hemianopia.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that much will. And that trachor, that junction of scotoma trachor itself has three
Yeah.
more types. One is trachor syndrome, one is junctional scotoma of trachor, and one is trachor sign. Like that, three signs are there. They ask what is the difference between. So initial trachor, they said only ipsilateral scotoma. He didn't mention about this one. Sorry, he said about superior quadranopia. He didn't mention about the scotoma. Initial trachor. Then followed by the multiple studies on his theory, then only they've found out that there is ipsilateral scotoma and contralateral superior quadranopia.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Any idea that how do you test a physiological blind spot in a patient? That
No.
also they ask.
Without perimetry.
Sir can
Clinical.
without perimetry.
Okay.
Contradiction.
Sir can-
Perimetry? Is it without perimetry that they asked?
Sir, without perimetry only, sir. One examiner asked me.
Clinical.
Sir can clinical.
No, I have to ask my wife. She's an ophthalmologist. I have to ask her.
Okay, sir.
So because
I don't
physiological blind spot is a negative scotoma, and negative scotoma the patient is not
Yeah,
aware
it
of
cannot be. Yeah. That is what I also don't know why he asked this. We asked any kind you can like any type you can test.
it. See, one
So,
test which
don't
my
know
senior
whether
told
he's-
me was, I'll just mention that I don't know if that's correct or not. You ask the
Okay.
patient to gaze straight in the primary gaze, and you move an object from the center of the vision, that is from 0 degrees. See, the blind spot is in the temporal field. Okay, so you take the object from the front of the eye gradually, laterally, and at one point of time, if the patient does not move his eye at all, at one point of time, he will notice that the object transiently disappears and then reappears.
Yeah, that might be a
So
crude
that is
way of
how
taking.
you
I think
document
that
the
is
blind
how.
spot.
I think that
so
is
this
the
had been told to
method he
me
was
by my
expecting.
senior, but I don't have any reference for it. No one has asked me in the
No,
exam,
even
so
I
I don't
also
know if
don't
it's the
have
correct
reference,
answer or
but
not.
I also heard the same thing. What you said now.
Yeah, so maybe
that
this is the way that you ask the patient to fixate in the primary gaze and
And one
gradually
more
move
way
the
of
object
this.
from the center to the lateral field.
I don't know. One more, my senior also said regarding this one field examination. What if you're strongly, if you know, like indirectly, if you know there's some cellular lesion and bitemporal hemianopia, what you can do is you can again while testing the fields, you can again separate it to with your hand itself. You can separate it to nasal and temporal, and you can ask if you're not getting the bitemporal hemianopia as perfect, like you can place a hand in front of the eye and you can test the each field with a red this one with a red object. That is not mentioned in the book. I have not seen anywhere in the book, but this where like a senior, one of the faculty also told me, like you can each this one field you can test by keeping your hand between the nasal as well as the temporal field. I don't know how far it is sensitive.
Okay.
See, that is something which we do because see, if the patient has a complete cutoff of the temporal field, if you do a finger counting, so as soon as you move from the nasal field to the temporal field, if you're showing him 4 fingers, the patient will tell you that now he can see only 3 fingers, with the patient looking at gazing in the primary gaze. So this is something that we usually do.
But I have seen sometimes they miss. I think patients. I have seen sometimes if you do this thing, they are much more clearer. That you get 1-2 patients I have seen in which I applied this kind of testing. In that they say that initial examination they don't say that much problem. Once I do this, then they say that I couldn't see on the temporal side like that.
Okay.
I don't know. So,
Okay.
Okay. One more point, one question they usually ask is what is the reason of spontaneous venous pulsation in eyes? Like in anywhere else in the bodies, we don't see venous pulsation. Only in the eyes we see venous pulsations. Why so?
No, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I'll explain this thing. So if this is in the sagittal section, you can see my marking.
pump against the gravity or something.
No, in the screen you can see what I'm drawing it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if this is the sagittal section of the optic disc now, what we are seeing here. Okay,
Mhm.
so I'll draw some veins here, but just a single vein to explain you. So this is how the vein is entering at the 90-degree angle.
Okay.
Fine. So in systole, now you are looking from this way. If you are doing a fundoscopy, you are
Yeah.
looking from front inside the eye. So in systole, blood is flowing in this direction, and in diastole, blood is flowing in opposite direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have continuous to and fro movements which you can see in fundoscopy like a snake's tongue, like the snake's hiss. So that's
Mhm.
why you can see or appreciate the pulsations from this point, from the 90-degree angle, because of the to and fro motion of the blood at the 90-degree angle of vein. Rest all veins in the body we see directly from the above. No, we don't have any 90-degree quick turn there. And these are very
Okay.
small veins. So in the because of that 90-degree turn and to and fro movement across here, this point, in systole blood
Mhm.
will flow inside and in diastole blood will come outside. So once you are seeing in the fundoscopy, at this point you will see that spontaneous venous pulsations. They say that the spontaneous venous pulsations are
Yeah. Yeah.
seen where the veins cross the margins of optic disc, because that is where they are dipping inside and making an acute turn.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any? Just 1 second. Karthik, you're done.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll mute you then. Okay. Yeah. Mayank.
No,
Mayank.
thank
Hello.
you.
Hello, Mayank. Any questions, Mayank? Mayank connection.
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Next is Neha. Any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Vivek Jadhav. Dr. Vivek Jadhav, any questions? Or Dr. Vivek Patel, any questions?
No, sir, no questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any more inputs from your side, sir? Sir, निकल गए क्या? नहीं है.
No,
नहीं
I
है ना घर में.
think it is important to just keep, at least the exam questions and clinically relevant slides in mind. It's
Yes,
very
sir.
difficult. I know Apurva has done a very good job, but difficult to recollect everything. You just try to remember what is important for your exam and clinical practice.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So thank you everyone for coming. Wonderful presentation, Apurva. Thank you to you too. And Dr. Ashish is not here, who is supposed to do facial now next. So I don't know if he's going to do. So Karthik, by when you'll be ready?
Tomorrow I'll tell you.
Okay, fair enough. Then I'll schedule.
Okay.
Karthik is presenting on
I
8th
am
now.
presenting 8th now.
Okay.
So
8th now.
at least
Okay.
I'll take at least till Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll need some time. In between, someone can present a small learner like 9th or 10th or something.
Okay, fair enough. I'll search for someone.
Yeah.
Sure. No problems.
We'll
Okay.
talk
Thank
to
you, everyone.
One,
Ashish
I'll
now.
see if there is a presentation in my database that I can just go through.
Fair enough, sir. Fair enough. Yes, sir.
Uh,
Monday we'll schedule that,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yeah, Monday should be fine. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
I'll
Monday.
just go through my database and send you the link by tonight.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay.
So Monday your lecture and Karthik on Wednesday. 8th now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.